In the past, the Battle of the American Cruisers was no battle at all. It was a rout. Harley Davidson was the 800-pound gorilla of American motorcycling, and Indian was barely a blip on the radar. But recently, Harley's sales have fallen while Indian's have risen, and now Indian is selling close to one bike for every 4 sold by Harley. That is still overwhelmingly in Harley's favor, but the trend is definitely causing the gap to close. And it is not out of the question that in the next decade or so it will close completely and Indian will catch up. This is anecdotal, but in the Canadian town where I live, I'm seeing more and more Indians on the streets, almost as many as Harleys, believe it or not. And the biggest multi-brand motorcycle dealer in Toronto just brought in Indian to add to its already extensive selection of Hondas, Ducatis, Triumphs, KTMs, BMWs, Husqvarnas, and MV Agustas. That places the closest Indian dealer to my house about the same distance as the closest Harley dealer. The dealerships are, in fact, practically next door to each other, and that leaves me wondering if Indian's rise is accelerating and if the other American motorcycle company will rise to become serious competition for Harley sooner rather than later. In this video, we'll compare how the two brands stack up in terms of baggers, big cruisers, smaller cruisers, other bikes, prices, dealerships, the aftermarket, reliability, dealer network, and company culture, and then declare the winner. So stay tuned for this point-by-point comparison, and if you find this content valuable, please consider supporting this channel by subscribing, liking the video, and sharing it with friends. Before any comparisons begin, we have to clear up that Harley Davidson is the same company that started producing motorcycles in 1903, although it was owned by AMF for some of its history, while the original Indian actually died in 1953 only to be resurrected in the 2000s and is now a subsidiary of Polaris Industries. To me, this is not super relevant, as existing continuously does not grant a company magical cred in any way as far as I'm concerned. Would Harley be more legit if they were never sold to AMF? Would the company lose its luster if it was sold to, say, an Indian auto manufacturer? To some it would, but not to me. In the automotive world, brands like Lamborghini and Porsche are owned by larger conglomerates and are no less desirable. While heritage is somewhat important, ultimately what makes a brand desirable is the quality of its bikes. So let's compare the most important motorcycles that Harley and Indian sell, the baggers. These are the cash cows for each company and the most commonly seen motorcycles on North American roads. Harley used to rule this category with the street and road glides, and while other manufacturers tried to get in on the action, they hardly made a dent in Harley's sales. The Indian Chieftains, which came out way back in 2014, were impressive for the time, but it wasn't until the Challenger came out that Harley had a real fight on its hands. The Challenger was faster, better handling, and had more modern electronics than competing Harley baggers, and smashed them in a series of direct comparisons. It was objectively the best American bagger. This year, however, Harley updated the design of the standard road and street glides and added a 117 cubic inch motor, which puts them back out in front in the baggerverse. The Harleys are better looking and cleaner designed than the Challenger, and the Chieftain and Springfield are in need of an update soon. Round 1 goes to Harley. In the heavyweight cruiser category, we have the Softails going up against the Chiefs, and Harley has been busy lately upgrading several Softails with a 117 cubic inch motor as well, which makes them better performers than the 116 cubic inch Chiefs. The Harley Milwaukee 8 107 is about on par with the Indian Thunderstroke 111, while the Harley 114 is comparable to the Thunderstroke 116. The 117 is an upgrade, and there are rumors that Indian is looking to release a 120 plus cubic inch Thunderstroke to compete with the 117 and 121 Milwaukee 8s recently released by Harley. But that engine is not here yet, so in the engine department, Harley has the edge. Styling is highly subjective, but to my eye, the Chiefs have always had the cooler frames and great looking profiles, while the Harleys have had better paint and a higher level of fit and finish. We're used to the Harleys more, and so their familiarity may make them look better to some, but that is not to say that we can't appreciate Indian's designs. Personally, I'd love to see a Chief Classic that looks like the Scout Classic but larger. Deep fenders and wire-spoked wheels would look great on the Chief platform. There are some advantages to the Chiefs though. You can get any of the Chiefs with a 111 motor and a lighter price tag, while the Softail Standard is the last lower priced 107 model sold by Harley. The lowest spec Indian Chief is also a lot nicer looking than the Softail Standard and comes in more color choices. Finally, the Street Bob and Softail Standard don't come with cruise control, while all of the Indian Chiefs have it. So this is a close one, but the Harleys might just edge the Chiefs out in this category, unless you're looking for a lower spec model, in which case you should go with Indian. Still close, but 2-0 Harley. Where Indian gets one back is in the smaller cruiser category. The new family of Indian Scouts provides far more choice and style than the two Harley Sportsters. Yes, the Sportster S is probably the fastest bike of the bunch, but for cruisers, it's style that matters, and the Scout 101 is way cooler looking. Indian has 6 Scouts and 3 Scout 60s, providing riders with choices in a wide variety of styles and price points. Harley has one pretty cool muscle bike and one aesthetically challenged $12,000 entry-level bike in quotation marks that, as far as I can tell, is a flop. This one's easy. Indian wins, 2-1 Harley. Each manufacturer has one other bike which is not a cruiser, and those are the Harley Davidson Pan America Adventure Bike and the Indian FTR 1200 Sport, Naked, Flat Track style bike. Both of these motorcycles are modern and competitive with other bikes in their classes, and frankly are impossible to compare to each other. The Pan America, being newer, is more modern and can go off-road, while the FTR 1200 is beautifully designed, sportier, and less expensive. Let's just call this a tie, but it would be great to see more bikes with these impressive engines. Aftermarket support is not close. Harley, having been around for much longer, wins in a landslide. Both companies also make plenty of accessories, but if you're looking to customize your ride, Harley Davidson will offer way more options. 3-1 Harley. Reliability is hard to determine. 9 years ago, when Consumer Reports conducted a thorough study of motorcycle reliability, Harley was a ways down and Indian wasn't included. However, Victory, the other now defunct brand owned by Polaris, finished almost tied with Kawasaki. Crazy. Do with that information what you will, but Indian is not Victory, and without specific data, an accurate determination can't be made. This one's a tie until we get another comprehensive study. Dealership network is a tricky one. Harley definitely has more dealers, so if you're in the boonies, that's probably the better bet. Indian is expanding fast and is getting picked up by multi-brand dealers all over the place, which makes the brand visible to far more motorcyclists. The fact that Harley Corporate insists on Harley-only dealers might come back to hurt them here, as all the Harley dealerships I've been to recently are fairly empty, while multi-brand dealers tend to be bustling. Because of this, folks who come to look at Ducatis or BMWs might stumble across the Indian models and get interested. On the other hand, no one stumbles across a Harley dealership. People walk in there to buy Harleys or look at Harley stuff. There are no other bikes in there, and lately you're lucky to find Harleys. Fewer and fewer bikes are being shipped to Harley dealers every year. One other advantage that Indian has here is the price of the service. Harley dealers charge massive premiums for working on your bike, generally way more than multi-brand shops. Yes, parts on the Ducati are expensive, as they are on Harleys or Indians for that matter, but labor costs tend to be lower in multi-brand dealerships, which means your Indian oil change and service will be cheaper. Let's call this one a tie. Harley wins in numbers, although Indian is catching up, but Indian wins in service costs as well as additional charges. You see, even on models with similar MSRPs, the Harley dealerships tend to have more additional fees, while I've seen Indians actually close or at MSRP in Indian dealerships. I have gotten comments about great Harley dealers out there who refrain from gouging their customers, but haven't ever myself seen a new Harley going out the door for MSRP or even close. So again, this one's a tie. Still, Harley up 3-1. And since we're here, let's talk about prices, because Indian wins this one on several accounts. As I already mentioned, forget MSRP, Harleys are more expensive because of their frequent markups. However, that's not the only reason. Harley Davidson seems determined to offer customers the bare minimum in entry-level machines while offering plenty of higher-end options. If you're looking for a lower-cost Harley, it's either the Nightster, the Softail Standard, the Street Bob, or the Sportster S. After that, we go way up in price. Indian has 3 Scout 60s, all less expensive than the least expensive Harley, the 6 new Scouts in various trim levels, and the 111 cubic inch Chiefs, which undercut most Softails in price and are much nicer than the Softail standard. Price-wise, Indian wins. It's 3-2 Harley. Finally, we come to brand culture, and this one will be contentious. Harley Davidson definitely has a larger community and more bikes on the road. If you're fond of socializing, you'll find more people on Harleys to do it with for sure. However, Harley Davidson has traditionally positioned itself as an everyman's bike. They were always pricey but seemed to cultivate a working man image. That's clearly done now. Between the astronomical prices on bikes and clothing, the boutique dealerships, you can almost call them posh, and the disdain some Harley riders display towards other brands, the culture has taken a hit. This happens less now, but when I got into motorcycling, Harley riders regularly referred to Japanese motorcycles as rice burners and wouldn't condescend to talk to their owners, much less ride with them. Thankfully, this trend is passing despite a few meatheads still hanging on to those attitudes. Indian, having been resurrected recently, is not saddled with that baggage. Indians are sold alongside other bikes in regular motorcycle shops, and presumably Indian riders are less picky about associating with guys on different bikes. Granted, most Harley riders are as well, but the cloud of brand exclusivity still hangs over the motor company and is not doing it any favors. So even though Harley has a bigger community, Indian is part of a bigger still community of all motorcycle riders from which Harley Davidson has set itself apart. I personally prefer a more general motorcycle community, but I'm aware that other riders will like the Harley crowd better, so let's call this very subjective category another tie. Ultimately, Harley Davidson finishes this comparison with a 3-2 edge, but it is worth noting that it is quite surprising that it was that close. 7 years ago, it would have been no contest, but as I said, the current momentum is with Indian. If you like the Indian culture better or a multi-brand dealership experience, you could easily lean in Indian's direction. If you're looking for a less expensive bike, Indian also has a significant edge, and I hope they keep the 111 cubic inch bikes as well as the Scout 60s. What do the two brands need to do to improve? Harley needs more affordable bikes, though I doubt they'll bring any to market under current leadership. CEO Jochen Zeiss seems determined to turn Harley into a boutique brand. Indian needs to update the Chieftains and Springfields and use that sweet FTR 1200 engine in more models, maybe an adventure bike which is lighter than the Pan America. Good idea in theory, but the adventure market is overcrowded and extremely competitive, so serious market research would have to be done on that one. I'd love to buy a Harley or an Indian, but realistically, with all the bikes I test during the Canadian summer, I know that I'd hardly ride it. If I did have time, it would be a tough choice. I like the Super Chief, especially since it's available at lower prices than the Heritage Classic with which it competes. However, you can get a lot of very lightly used Harleys secondhand, so my choice would probably come down to whichever of the bikes I like came my way at a good price first. Maybe even a low mileage discontinued model like the Road King 107. But what about you? Which brand and model would you go for? I love to read your comments because it helps me keep my finger on the pulse of the motorcycling industry, so please feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Summer is fast approaching in the Northern Hemisphere, and the riding season is upon us. Remember that in colder climates, it takes drivers a while to become aware of motorcycles on the road in the spring. So ride defensively, and may the spokes be with you.